Fix them, poor man, or admit you never belonged in this business. That was the sentence Madeline Hartwell gave Caleb Whitaker in front of 12 dead cars, 30 staring employees, and one little girl holding her father's lunch in both hands. The tow trucks had arrived just after 8 a.m., growling down Maple Route like a funeral line of rusted metal. One by one, they dropped the cars outside Caleb's small repair garage, each one dented, coughing, stained with rain, and marked with orange auction stickers that looked almost like warnings. A cracked Ford Explorer. A flooded Chevy Malibu. A Dodge Ram with its hood tied down by rope. An old Cadillac that smelled faintly of mildew even from 20 feet away. By the time the last vehicle hit the gravel, the whole street had slowed to watch. Then the black SUV arrived. Madeline stepped out in a cream-colored coat, her heels clicking against the broken concrete as if the ground itself should have been grateful. Brent Calloway walked beside her with a tablet under his arm and a smile too clean to be honest. 72 hours, Madeline said. 12 cars, Brent added. One per mechanic, someone whispered from the dealership crew, and laughter moved through them like wine through dry leaves. Caleb did not answer. He stood in the open bay door of Whitaker Auto, wiping his hands on a blue shop rag that had been washed so many times it had lost its color. His shirt was plain, his boots scuffed, his hair touched with gray at the temples. Behind the glass office door, 9-year-old Ellie Whitaker pressed her lunchbox against her chest. She had packed him a ham sandwich, apple slices, and a note that said, "You can fix anything, Daddy." Caleb saw her watching. That was why he stayed calm. Madeline lifted a folder and held it out like a judge offering a sentence. These cars came from Hartwell Motors' dead inventory. My father used to say a real mechanic could hear what a machine needed. People in this town claim you're special. So prove it. Caleb looked at the cars, then back at her. And if I don't? Brent smiled wider. Then you sign over your lease option and stop undercutting our dealership with pity repairs and backyard prices? A few employees chuckled again. Madeline did not laugh, but she did not stop them either. That hurt more than the words. The morning air smelled of diesel, wet gravel, and old motor oil. A loose chain on one tow bed swung softly, tapping metal in a slow rhythm. Caleb stepped forward, took the folder, and felt the weight of 12 problems meant to bury him. I'll look at them, he said. No speech? Brent asked. No big promise? Caleb folded the rag once, then twice. Promises are loud. Work is quieter. The laughter faded for half a second, but Madeline's face stayed cold. She turned as if the matter were finished. That was when something small fell from the cracked hood of the Cadillac and landed near Caleb's boot. A silver badge, dull with age, stamped with the Hartwell crest and a serial number almost erased by rust. Caleb bent down slowly and picked it up. His thumb brushed the numbers, and the world around him seemed to narrow. He knew that badge. He had seen it years ago on a car that was never supposed to be here, from a private anniversary line built for Madeline's father before the records disappeared. Caleb closed his fingers around it, lifted his eyes toward Madeline's departing SUV, and for the first time that morning, he stopped breathing like a poor man being mocked. He breathed like a man who had just found the first piece of the truth. Caleb did not open the folder right away. He waited until the black SUV disappeared past the stop sign, until the dealership employees drifted back across the road, until the tow trucks coughed out of sight and left only tire marks, puddles, and 12 broken machines sitting like accusations in front of his garage. Then he turned toward the office and saw Ellie still standing behind the glass, her small face trying to be brave. You heard all that? He asked softly when he stepped inside. Ellie nodded, then looked down at the lunchbox in her hands. Why did you let them talk to you like that? Caleb took the lunchbox from her, set it on the counter, and knelt so his eyes were level with hers. The office was barely bigger than a storage room, with a cracked vinyl chair, a coffee maker that rattled when it brewed, and a wall calendar from 3 years ago because Ellie liked the picture of the golden retriever on it. Outside, the wind pushed dust across the shop windows. Inside, the old fluorescent light hummed like it was tired too. Because being loud is easy, Caleb said. Staying steady takes practice. Ellie swallowed. But they laughed. I know. And she called you poor. Caleb gave her a gentle smile, not because it was funny, but because he did not want her to see the bruise those words had left. "Poor is when you stop giving. We are not there yet." Ellie looked at him for a long moment, then opened the lunchbox and pulled out the folded note she had written that morning. He read it again, slower this time. "You can fix anything, Daddy." His thumb rested on the pencil marks, and the quiet in the room deepened. Caleb Whitaker had built his whole life around quiet. The small apartment behind the garage had one bedroom for Ellie, a fold-out couch for him, and a kitchen window that looked straight into the service bay. Every morning before sunrise he made instant coffee, packed Ellie's school bag, and checked the jar where he kept cash for her asthma medicine. Some weeks, the jar was full enough to breathe. Some weeks, it was not. Still, he paid what he could, fixed what he promised, and never let a customer leave with a car he would not put his own daughter in. Around town, people called him decent. Some called him stubborn. A few called him a man who could have been more if life had not taken the shine off him. They did not know about the old certificates locked in the bottom drawer. They did not know about the engineering awards wrapped in newspaper beneath Ellie's winter coats. They did not know that long before he became the mechanic with the faded sign and the overdue electric bill, Caleb had stood in design rooms where million-dollar cars were born from sketches, steel, and pride. Ellie wandered into the back room while he washed his hands. A few minutes later, she came out holding a brown leather notebook, its corners soft from age. "Daddy," she said. "Was this Mom's?" Caleb froze. The notebook had been tucked inside a storage box he had not opened in years. On the first page was his late wife's handwriting, neat and warm, and beneath it a pencil drawing of a showroom with tall glass walls and a bright sign above the entrance, Hartwell Motors. In the lower corner, beside a date from more than a decade earlier, was Caleb's own signature. Ellie traced it with one finger. "You drew this?" Caleb dried his hands slowly. Outside, one of the broken cars settled on its shocks with a tired creak. The sound carried through the garage like an old memory clearing its throat. Caleb looked at the drawing, then at the silver Hartwell badge lying on the counter beside Ellie's lunchbox. "No, sweetheart," he said quietly. "Your mother saved it because she knew someday I might need to remember who I was." By the time Madeline Hartwell returned to her office, the laughter from Caleb's garage had already lost its sweetness. It followed her through the glass doors of Hartwell Motors, past the polished showroom floor, past the new trucks under perfect white lights, past the framed photograph of her father shaking hands with customers back when a handshake still meant more than a signature. She removed her coat, placed it over the back of her chair, and stood for a moment in the silence of the executive suite. Below her window, salesmen moved between cars with bright smiles and hungry eyes. On her desk, 3 folders waited like unpaid debts. Bank review. Inventory losses. Board emergency notice. Madeline touched the edge of the last folder but did not open it. Brent Calloway entered without knocking, carrying 2 coffees and the confidence of a man who always knew where the weak floorboards were. "You handled him perfectly," Brent said, setting 1 cup near her hand. "The town needed to see that Hartwell still has teeth." Madeline looked down at the dealership lot, where the morning sun flashed across chrome and windshield glass. "He did not look scared." Brent laughed softly. "Men like Caleb Whitaker are good at looking noble when they have nothing left to lose. You said he was damaging our service department. He is. You said he was stealing customers. He is. You said he lies about our repairs." Brent leaned closer, his voice dropping into that reasonable tone he used when he wanted cruelty to sound like strategy. "He does not have to lie, Madeline. He only has to make people feel sorry for him. Single father. Dead wife. Little garage on the edge of town. Folks eat that up. Meanwhile, we carry payroll, insurance, floor plan interest, bank pressure. This is not a church charity. This is business." Madeline said nothing. The room smelled of leather, printer ink, and expensive coffee gone too sweet. On the wall behind her desk hung her father's old brass dealership key, mounted in a shadow box beneath the words "Built on Trust." She hated looking at it lately. Trust had not paid the late invoices. Trust had not stopped customers from questioning inspection reports. Trust had not kept the bank from sending letters printed in cold language. "The board meets Friday," Brent said. If we show them we are cutting waste, controlling the narrative, and pushing back against local noise, they will give us time. Madeline turned from the window. And if Caleb fixes the cars? Brent's smile held, but only because he forced it to. He cannot. Half of them are beyond practical repair. The other half will expose him as reckless if he tries. Either way, he loses. For a moment, she wanted to believe him completely. It would have been easier. Easier to make Caleb the problem. Easier to make poverty look like incompetence. Easier to mistake power for wisdom. But something about the way Caleb had folded that rag, something about his quiet answer, had stayed with her like a pebble in her shoe. After Brent left, Madeline opened the lower drawer of her father's old filing cabinet. She was not sure what she was looking for. Maybe a number. Maybe a warranty record. Maybe proof that the past had been cleaner than the present felt. In the back, behind dusty registration copies and yellowed service awards, she found a sealed envelope marked Anniversary Prototype Program. Her father's handwriting crossed the front in blue ink. Her chest tightened. She opened it carefully. Inside was a photograph. Her father stood beside a half-built showroom model, smiling with one arm around a younger man. In a shop jacket. The young man had darker hair then, fewer lines around his eyes, but the same steady posture, the same calm that did not ask permission to exist. Madeline turned the photograph over. Written on the back were 5 words that made the office feel suddenly smaller: Hartwell's best mind, Caleb Whitaker. Caleb waited until Ellie fell asleep before he opened the first hood. The garage had gone quiet except for the ticking of cooling engines, the soft rattle of rain against the tin awning, and the old radio on the shelf playing a country song low enough to sound like memory. He pulled on his work gloves, set the Hartwell badge beside the brown leather notebook, and rolled the cracked Ford Explorer under the main light. At first glance, it looked like every forgotten trade in that had been pushed too far and loved too little. But Caleb had never trusted first glances. A car had a language. Scratches were punctuation. Bolts were fingerprints. Fluid stains were confessions left by people who thought metal could keep secrets. He leaned over the engine bay and frowned. "Wrong intake," he whispered. "Wrong year." He checked the vehicle identification number near the windshield, then the stamp number along the frame. They did not match. He wrote both down in a yellow legal pad, slow and careful. The second car, the flooded Chevy Malibu, had water damage on the carpet but none behind the lower dash, which meant someone had made it look worse than it was. The third, the Dodge Ram, carried a replacement airbag module with a sticker peeled halfway off. Caleb stopped, took a photograph, then placed the module gently on a clean towel as if evidence deserved respect too. One by one, the broken cars began speaking. "Auction fraud," Caleb murmured. "Salvage wash." He paused at the Cadillac. "And you, old girl, what did they do to you?" Outside, a passing semi hissed along the wet highway. Inside, the fluorescent light flickered once, then steadied. Caleb opened the Cadillac's glove box and found nothing but an expired registration and a napkin from a diner that had closed 10 years earlier. Then he checked beneath the trunk liner. His fingers touched paper. He lifted a brittle envelope stained with oil. Inside were service invoices from Hartwell Motors, each one tied to vehicles marked certified, each one signed off by the same internal code. B.C. Brent Calloway. Caleb placed the invoices beside the badge. The pattern was no longer a feeling. It had a name. By midnight, 6 hoods stood open like witnesses raising their hands. Caleb had found altered inspection tags, mismatched parts, deleted service notes, and one onboard data recorder that still held a record of mileage far higher than the sale documents claimed. He could have called Madeline right then. He could have walked into Hartwell Motors the next morning and made noise. But noise was not truth. Noise made people defensive. Truth needed to arrive clean, undeniable, and calm. He turned to the 12th car, the one tucked at the far end of the line beneath a blue tarp. It was lower than the rest, its shape hidden by dust and weather, but something about the curve of its fender pulled him backward through time. Caleb removed the tarp slowly. Underneath sat a silver coupe with missing trim, cracked glass, and a Hartwell crest on the grille. His breath caught. Not from fear. From grief. From recognition. He stepped closer and wiped dust from the driver's side quarter panel. There, beneath the grime, was a hand-etched mark he had made himself years ago, 3 small lines inside the wheel well where no customer would ever see them. He remembered the design room. He remembered Madeline's father laughing over coffee. He remembered his wife standing in the corner, pregnant with Ellie, telling him the car looked like a promise. Caleb opened the driver door. The interior smelled of old leather, metal, and a past that had waited patiently to be found. On the passenger seat lay a cracked folder labeled Prototype 12. Caleb stood in the blue-white shop light, surrounded by 12 cars that were not junk at all. They were a buried confession. And the last one had his name written all through its bones. By morning, the video had already spread farther than Caleb expected. Brent had filmed the 12 cars being dropped off, added a bright caption, and posted it before lunch. Poor dad thinks he can save dead inventory. By the time Ellie walked into Willow Creek Elementary, half her class had seen it on their parents' phones. Nobody said much at first. Children often learn cruelty by watching adults rehearse it, and by recess the words had found their way to the playground. "Is your dad really fixing junk?" one boy asked. "My uncle said he is just trying to act important," another said. Ellie held her backpack straps and stared at the blacktop. She wanted to say her father could hear an engine the way some people heard music. She wanted to say he had stayed awake all night with grease on his hands and kindness still in his voice. But her throat tightened, and all she could do was walk away. When Caleb picked her up that afternoon, she climbed into his old pickup without her usual smile. "Bad day?" he asked. She shrugged. "Did someone say something?" Ellie looked out the window at the passing maple trees, their leaves flashing gold under the late sun. "They said you are poor because you fix broken things nobody wants." Caleb kept both hands on the wheel. The road hummed beneath them. A pickup passed in the other lane, pulling a bass boat toward the lake. For a while, he let silence sit between them, not empty silence, but the kind that gives pain room to set down its bags. "Do you know why I fix broken things?" he finally asked. Ellie shook her head. "Because broken does not mean worthless. It means someone stopped caring before the story was finished." She wiped her cheek with her sleeve. "Are we worthless to them?" Caleb pulled into the garage lot and parked beside the silver prototype, still half covered by the tarp. He turned toward her. "No, sweetheart. They can laugh at our truck, our house, my boots, or the way we live. But they do not get to name our worth. Poor does not take your dignity. Hate does that. And we are not giving hate the keys." Ellie nodded, trying to be brave. Then she saw Brent standing near the service bay with 2 men from the dealership, all 3 dressed too clean for the oily ground beneath them. Brent held his phone up, recording again. "There he is," Brent called. "The miracle mechanic and his assistant." Caleb stepped out first and closed the truck door gently. "This is private property, Brent. Relax. I just came to check progress. Madeline likes updates." His eyes flicked toward Ellie. "Maybe your little girl can explain how 12 cars get fixed with lunch money and bedtime prayers." The 2 men laughed softly. Ellie's face went pale. Caleb did not move fast. He did not raise his voice. He simply walked around the truck, stood between Brent and his daughter, and folded his hands in front of him. "Do not speak to my child that way." Brent smirked. "Or what?" The garage seemed to grow still. Rainwater dripped from the awning into an old coffee can with a hollow ping. Somewhere inside the shop, the Cadillac's dome light flickered as if the old car itself were listening. Caleb's voice stayed low. "Cars break from age, weather, bad roads, bad parts. People break when they think money gives them permission to make others feel small." Brent rolled his eyes, but Caleb saw the tiny red light on Ellie's school tablet resting inside the truck window. She had opened the camera before stepping out, maybe from fear, maybe from instinct, maybe because children raised by quiet men learn to protect truth without making noise. Brent leaned closer, careless now. "Those cars were never meant to be fixed, Whitaker. They were meant to bury you." Caleb looked at him, then at the 12 vehicles lined beneath the gray sky. "Then you should have buried the truth deeper." Brent's smile faltered for the first time. Ellie lowered the tablet slowly, and in the small reflection of its dark screen, Caleb saw not revenge, not anger, but the beginning of justice taking shape. Madeline did not come to the garage because Brent told her to. She came because the photograph from her father's file had sat on her desk all evening like a question that would not close its eyes. By 10:43 p.m., the dealership was dark behind her, the board documents untouched, the coffee cold, and the words on the back of that photograph repeating in her mind, Hartwell's best mind, Caleb Whitaker. So she drove alone through the light rain, past the pharmacy, past the closed diner, past the schoolware. The playground swings moved gently in the wind. When she turned into Caleb's lot, she expected failure. She expected excuses, maybe scattered parts and desperate guessing. Instead, she saw 6 cars lined beneath the shop lights, washed, repaired, and running so smoothly that the sound seemed almost peaceful. Their headlights glowed through the rain like patient eyes. Caleb stood beside the silver coupe, sleeves rolled up, one hand resting on the open door, his face lit by the dashboard. He did not look surprised when she stepped inside. "You should not be here alone this late," he said. Madeline glanced at the cars. "Neither should you. I live here. You fixed them. Some of them. In 2 days? They were not as broken as someone wanted them to look." The rain tapped the roof in soft, uneven rhythms. The garage smelled of warm engines, wet concrete, and coffee that had been reheated too many times. Madeline moved closer to the silver coupe and stopped when she saw the Hartwell crest on the grille. Her breath changed. "Where did this come from?" Caleb wiped his hands on a towel. "Your inventory." "No. That is not possible." "That is what I thought too." She looked through the open door at the cracked leather seats, the unfinished console, the old design tags still tied beneath the steering column. Something in her expression shifted, not into anger, but into fear wearing a businesswoman's face. "My father talked about a car like this," she whispered. "He said it was never completed." Caleb reached for a folder on the workbench. "It was completed enough to matter." Madeline did not take it at first. Pride held her hand at her side. Then memory overcame pride, and she opened the folder. Inside were photographs, service codes, mismatched vehicle numbers, altered inspection sheets, and the old invoices bearing Brent's internal approval mark. Page by page, the story became harder to deny. "Brent told me you were trying to ruin us," she said. Caleb's voice remained quiet. "Someone is using your name to sell dangerous cars to families who trust that sign across the road. You think I knew?" "No." She looked up quickly, almost startled by the mercy in that answer. Caleb continued, "If I thought you knew, we would not be standing here talking." The words landed heavier than an accusation. Madeline stepped back, her eyes moving from the folder to the running cars to Ellie's school tablet sitting on the counter beside a half-eaten sandwich. "There is more," Caleb said. He played the short video Ellie had captured. Brent's voice filled the garage, careless and smug, saying the cars were meant to bury him. Madeline's face went still. Not cold this time. Still in the way a lake goes still before ice cracks. "I trusted him," she said. "You trusted the loudest man in the room." Caleb closed the tablet gently. "That happens when grief makes quiet people look weak." She turned toward the silver coupe. On the inside of the driver door, beneath dust and age, she saw a small engraved signature. Caleb Whitaker. It matched the handwriting on her father's old photograph. For the first time since she had stepped from the black SUV that morning, Madeline did not look like a chief executive officer. She looked like a daughter standing inside the last honest thing her father had tried to build. "Why did you leave?" she asked. Caleb looked at the car, then toward the dark window of the apartment where Ellie slept. "Because after my wife died, I stopped believing the industry wanted truth more than profit." Madeline lowered her eyes. Outside, the rain softened. Inside, the 6 restored engines kept running, steady and clean, like witnesses waiting for morning. Madeline stayed in Caleb's garage long after the engines were turned off. The rain had slowed to a mist, and the town outside looked washed clean, as if the night itself had been trying to rinse away old lies. Caleb placed 3 more folders on the workbench, each one labeled in careful handwriting: inspections, financing, safety records. Madeline looked at them but did not reach yet. Some truths ask permission before they enter a heart. Others simply stand at the door until pride moves out of the way. "My father trusted you," she said. Caleb nodded once. And I trusted him. Then why is your name nowhere in our company history? Caleb looked toward the silver coupe, where the Hartwell crest caught a thin stripe of light. Because some men build the house, and other men get their picture in front of it. There was no bitterness in his voice, only a tired kind of honesty. Years earlier, Caleb Whitaker had been the youngest systems engineer Hartwell Motors ever hired, a quiet mechanic's son from Ohio who could diagnose a transmission by sound and redesign a safety protocol over lunch. Madeline's father, Arthur Hartwell, saw him not as hired help, but as the future of the company. Together, they designed a certification program meant to make used cars safer for working families. Every brake line checked. Every airbag verified. Every mileage record matched. No shortcuts. No hidden damage. Arthur used to say that a dealership did not sell cars. It sold the promise that a parent could drive home safely with a child in the back seat. Caleb believed that. His wife, Hannah, believed it too. She would bring sandwiches to the design room, sit on a stool near the drafting table, and laugh when Caleb forgot to eat because he was chasing a problem through blueprints. She was pregnant with Ellie then, wearing sneakers and hope, telling him the world needed men who cared about bolts because bolts held families together. Then everything changed. A certified vehicle from another dealer, polished and approved on paper, failed during a family trip outside Dayton. Hannah survived long enough to hold Caleb's hand, long enough to ask him not to let grief turn him hard. The investigation dragged through paperwork, signatures, insurance language, and quiet settlements. Hartwell Motors was not blamed, but Caleb learned something that hollowed him out. The same kind of certification system he had built to protect families was already being copied, watered down, and abused by people who saw safety as a sticker, not a duty. I walked away, Caleb said. Not because I stopped caring. Because I cared too much and did not trust myself to stay gentle. Madeline covered her mouth with one hand, but no tears came yet. Tears would have been easier. Guilt, when it is honest, often arrives dry. And Ellie? She asked. She was 2 months old. I had a daughter who needed breakfast more than headlines. So I disappeared into work I could understand. One car. One customer. One honest repair at a time. He opened the final folder and slid it toward her. Inside were bank notices, lien transfers, and copies of debt purchases made through a small law office in Cedar Rapids. Madeline read the first page, then the second. Her face changed slowly. You bought our debt. Some of it. Why? Because Brent was arranging a forced sale to a private liquidation group. They would strip the dealership, sell the land, close the service department, and leave your employees with nothing. You could have let that happen after what I did to you. Caleb looked at her then, calm and steady beneath the old fluorescent light. My daughter was watching. Those 4 words did more than shame her. They reached past her title, past her fear, past the armor she had mistaken for strength. Madeline looked down at the photograph of her father and Caleb, then at the folders that proved betrayal had been working under her roof while she was busy defending it. What happens now? She whispered. Caleb gathered the papers into one clean stack. Outside, dawn had begun to silver the edges of the garage windows. No, he said. We let the truth walk in through the front door. By Friday morning, Hartwell Motors looked less like a dealership and more like a stage built for judgment. Bright balloons lined the entrance, glossy banners promised a once-in-a-lifetime inventory event, and a row of folding chairs faced the showroom floor where Brent Calloway had arranged the 12 cars under white lights. Reporters from 2 local stations waited near the coffee bar. Bank representatives stood by the reception desk with sealed folders. Salesmen whispered in small clusters, pretending not to be afraid. Brent moved through it all in a navy suit, smiling as if he had already won. Today we clean house, he told the crowd. We remove dead weight, bad inventory, and local rumors. Madeline stood near the front, dressed in black, her posture straight, her face unreadable. No one knew she had spent the night in Caleb's garage. No one knew the papers hidden inside her leather briefcase were not the papers Brent expected her to sign. Where is your mechanic? Brent asked quietly. Running late? Madeline looked toward the glass doors. No. He arrives when truth is ready. Brent frowned, but before he could answer, the first engine started outside. Then the second. Then the third. Heads turned. The glass doors opened, and Caleb Whitaker walked in with Ellie beside him, her small hand tucked in his. Behind them, one by one, the 12 cars rolled slowly into position, clean, repaired, and running with a smoothness that stole the breath from the room. The old Cadillac came first. The Ford Explorer followed. The Dodge Ram, the Chevy Malibu, and finally the silver prototype moved beneath the lights like a memory brought back from the grave. A salesman whispered, "He fixed them all." Another said, "That is impossible." Caleb did not smile. He wore a clean blue shirt, old jeans, and the same worn boots that had stood in wet gravel 3 days earlier. Ellie carried her school tablet against her chest like a child carrying a lantern. Brent stepped forward, clapping once too loudly. "Impressive little show, Caleb. But repaired does not mean roadworthy, and theater does not erase liability." Caleb set a stack of folders on the hood of the Cadillac. "Then we should talk about liability." The room quieted. Madeline nodded to the media technician near the wall. The showroom screen came alive with inspection records, vehicle identification numbers, auction reports, mileage logs, and photographs Caleb had taken beneath each hood. No shouting. No accusation without proof. Just fact after fact, placed gently and firmly where lies could no longer breathe. "This Explorer was sold once as certified after frame damage was hidden," Caleb said. "This Malibu was labeled flood loss, but the waterline was staged to lower auction value before resale. This Ram has an airbag module that does not belong to its year." Brent laughed, but it cracked at the edges. "This is nonsense." Caleb turned one page. "Your approval code is on every file." The silence deepened. Brent looked at Madeline. "You cannot let him do this." Madeline stepped forward, her voice calm but no longer cold. "I already did." Ellie lifted the tablet, and Brent's recorded words filled the showroom. "Those cars were never meant to be fixed, Whitaker. They were meant to bury you." No one moved. Even the coffee machine seemed to stop humming. Brent reached for his phone, but a woman in a gray suit entered through the side door with 2 bank officials behind her. "Mr. Calloway," she said, "I am Dana Mercer, counsel for the controlling creditor group. Hardwell Motors has triggered an emergency transfer clause due to fraudulent encumbrances and unauthorized debt activity." Brent's face strained of color. "What creditor group?" Dana looked toward Caleb. "The one now represented by Mr. Whitaker." A sound moved through the showroom, not quite a gasp, not quite a prayer. Caleb placed his hand gently on Ellie's shoulder. He did not look triumphant. He looked steady. "I did not come here to take anything that honor built," he said. "I came to stop dishonest men from selling it for parts." Madeline lowered her eyes, and the great bright showroom fell into the kind of silence money cannot buy. The silence did not break when Dana Mercer finished speaking. It only changed shape. A few employees looked at Brent as if seeing him clearly for the first time. A salesman near the reception desk quietly removed his Hartwell name badge and held it in his palm, uncertain whether the place he had served still existed the way he remembered. Brent tried to speak, but every sentence he reached for seemed to collapse before it reached his mouth. Dana stepped aside with the bank officials, and within minutes the truth moved through the room on paper, signatures, and quiet legal language. Unauthorized debt. Misrepresented assets. Emergency transfer. Criminal referral pending review. Caleb stood beside the silver prototype, one hand resting on Ellie's shoulder, not smiling, not celebrating, not feeding on another man's downfall. That was what made the moment heavier. Revenge would have been noisy. Dignity was almost silent. Madeline walked toward him slowly, passing the 12 restored cars, passing employees who could not meet her eyes, passing the photograph of her father mounted near the customer lounge. When she stopped in front of Caleb, her voice was steady, but stripped of every polished layer she had worn for years. "I was wrong about you." Caleb said nothing. She looked at Ellie, then back at him. "And worse, I let people under my roof treat you and your daughter like you were small." Ellie held her tablet tighter, but Caleb gently touched her hand, reminding her that apologies were not always easy to give and deserved room to breathe when they were honest. Madeline turned to the employees, the cameras, and the customers who had gathered near the glass doors. My father built this dealership on trust. I inherited his name, but not his humility. Caleb Whitaker protected both when I failed to. No one clapped. It was not that kind of moment. Some truths are too sacred for applause. Dana handed Caleb the final transfer folder. Mr. Whitaker, with the creditor rights exercised and the acquisition documents completed, operational control is yours. A ripple moved through the showroom. Caleb opened the folder, looked at the signature line, then at the brass key in the shadow box behind Madeline's office door. For years, that key had watched over a business losing its soul. Now it watched a poor single father decide what kind of manpower would make him. He signed once. Carefully. Cleanly. Then he closed the folder and handed it back. Brent was escorted out by legal staff and 2 senior employees, not with chaos, not with spectacle, but with the quiet finality of consequences arriving on time. Caleb turned to the staff. No one loses a job today because one man forgot what honesty costs. Service continues Monday. Every certified vehicle will be rechecked. Every family who was misled will be contacted. And from now on, if a car is not safe enough for my daughter, it is not safe enough for anyone. A service technician wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. Madeline looked away, ashamed and relieved all at once. Later that afternoon, the old sign was taken down from above the showroom entrance. Not thrown away. Lowered carefully. Caleb kept the Hartwell name, but added another beside it, Hartwell and Whitaker Family Motors. Beneath it, in smaller letters, he placed Arthur Hartwell's old promise, built on trust. At sunset, Ellie stood beside the silver prototype, now polished enough to catch the orange light through the glass. She pressed the restored crest back onto the grille, while Madeline watched from a few feet away. Why did you not just take it all away from her? Ellie asked. Caleb knelt beside her, his hands still marked with grease that no new title could wash out. Because justice is not the same thing as cruelty, he said. And because you were watching. Madeline covered her mouth, finally letting the tears come. Caleb rose, picked up the old brass office key, and placed it in her hand. You know the business, he said softly. Now learn the dignity. She stared at the key as if it weighed more than the entire dealership. Outside, cars passed on the highway, ordinary families heading home in the evening light. Inside, no one laughed at Caleb Whitaker anymore. They stood in silence, not because he had bought a building, but because he had saved what money almost destroyed.